Welcome to the Win, Make, Give podcast. This is Ben Kinney, joined with Chad Himes and Bob Stewart. We are in part 6 of the Persuasion and Influence series. Today, we're going to talk about another factor of persuasion called liking.
Ben, before we start, you look really handsome today. Like, did you do something different with your hair or...
You just want him to feature you on this episode and make sure that he likes you a little more, huh, Bob?
Flattery will get you everywhere in my world. Thank you, Bob Stewart. If you would like to make a positive comment about my metabolism, that would be appreciated next.
You know that's coming from Bob's mic.
Not from the hard-to-like Chad Himes.
That's right. I won't be saying much on this
Chad,
episode.
you should probably just listen to this episode instead of participate.
I'm going to take notes.
It's a solid point. Ladies and gentlemen, people decide to do business with you because they like you. They decide to work with you because they like you. They will buy something because they like you. All of the things that we talk about, sales, leadership, coaching, recruiting, marketing, this is a tool that could be used for you. Now, in the book that we've been discussing heavily in this series called Influence, The Psychology of Persuasion by Robert Cialdini, Dr. Robert Cialdini, he shared an interesting story. And it was an MBA case study where they took a look at two different colleges and just to kind of prove it to be true, and they did two exercises. At both colleges, they broke out into two groups. Both groups' goal was to come to an agreement on terms of a negotiation. And there was only one difference. The first group was told, time is money. You need to get it done. Be fast, negotiate, etc. That group, 55% of the groups on average from both MBA programs were able to come to a consensus, an agreement. The second group was a little bit different. They simply said, hey, before you get started today, we would like you to get to know each other, share a couple things, and before you get started, find one thing you have in common. With that simple addition, 90% of that group, both groups, both colleges, were able to come to an agreement.
That's a huge change.
That's like an 85% increase.
Yeah, it's massive. And the value of the agreement that they came up with was positive by 18% for both parties, means the terms of the deal was a better win-win. That one simple change. You know, I think about this comment that somebody made to me early in my career, a very influential woman in my life. And this woman said, Ben, sometimes being right isn't the most important thing. And when you go into something like a negotiation or a sales, sometimes we spend a lot of time trying to be right or prove somebody right or wrong or presenting the facts or whatever that might be, instead of just slowing down and getting to know each other. Wouldn't you guys agree?
Absolutely.
Yeah, for sure.
So when we decided to dig into the science of getting somebody to like us, another word for that would be building rapport quickly. We uncovered a variety of factors that we'd like to share with you today. Number one, seems a little obvious, but people like people who appear to be similar to them. Which, Bob, we were talking about the car dealership comment earlier today. What was that story?
Well, as inside of the book, they give this example of the guy, Joe Girard, who's like the number one all-time car sales guy ever. This guy was selling 7 or 8 cars. He's like in the Guinness Book of World Records. But one of the things they talked about car people doing is trying to find some similarity with you. And the example they give in the book says, oftentimes if your car was like bought out of state, they'll say, oh, my wife or me are from that area. My wife and I were in the Lexus dealership, 3 weeks ago, and the guy did that to us. We had bought our car in Arizona, and he said, well, they'd looked it up, and they were looking at giving us a price for it, and he said, hey, I noticed that you guys got your car down in Arizona. My wife's from Arizona. And I didn't think anything of it, right? And by the way, at the end of the day, I did like that guy. Like that said, we didn't end up buying the car from him, but I liked the guy, right? And so he was using these tactics, I think, on us all throughout that, that 45 minutes we spent with him.
Hypothetically, his wife could have been from Arizona, but your theory today is that he was using that one factor to get him to like you?
Yeah, to find some similarity between us, like anything that he could find that was creating some kind of a similarity so that we would like him more.
Sounds like a nice little tactic, right? If we haven't lived all over the country, it doesn't mean we don't know someone who's from that area. Bob was also talking, if you don't know this about Bob, he, I think, has more hats than shoes. And we've talked about your shoes on many episodes, Bob. And you were actually saying that you will intentionally buy hats representing different sports teams so that when you're going into a meeting with somebody or on a Zoom call with someone from a certain area, you might wear their sports team's hat just to create that likability between the two of you right away.
I do it with clients, some of the bigger clients we have in our world, and I meet with some of these clients on a monthly basis. Yeah, I go out but there's never another time I'd wear like an NFL team hat except the Seahawks, by the way. Like it just doesn't happen outside of my house, but I will throw on like a Buffalo Bills hat when I'm meeting with one of our clients up in Buffalo, or so I have a Tampa Bay Bucks hat.
So anybody who's in one of those meetings, we need a photo so I can use that against Bob.
There's a few of them out there.
When the Seahawks season
Cowboys
begins.
photo, the Dallas team caught me in a Cowboys
If we look around at our friends, Ben, we're probably with people who are similar to us. They probably either will live near us, have similar likes or dislikes, maybe similar shapes, sizes, things like that. Tall people like tall people, shorter people like short people. This is what you're talking about as one of the key factors of liking.
Yeah, absolutely. Finding commonalities. Now, I remember very early in my career, I was taught the Ford method.
Yeah.
And in fact, could have been a class that you were teaching because it came from the same material that we were used to back then.
Yep.
But the Ford method was, there's a word for each one of the letters of Ford. And I'm a Ford truck driving son of a gun, so I like this anyway. But building rapport, you look to find commonalities using the Ford method. F is family.
Yep.
Do you have kids? Do you not have kids? Are you married? Where are you from? That sort of stuff, right? The O is occupation. Well, what do you do for a living? Well, my dad did that, or my mom did that, or that's interesting. I always wanted to do that. You're finding commonality. Recreation. What do you do when you're not working? Well, I like to X, Y, Z, right? And D, dreams. Well, what's important to you? What are you thinking about? Where do you see yourself being? What's really funny about this comment, it was last night about 7 o'clock, I get a message from a friend of mine who said, I have these people that are moving across the United States and they have a couple of questions about moving to your state. Would you talk to them? I said, absolutely. So I call them up. It's nearly 10 o'clock their time. And I started talking to them and they said, well, what do you think about this area as a place to go move to? And I said, there's some comments that I'll give you about the area. But before I do, tell me what's important to you. And she said, well, we're really big into scuba diving. Okay. And my very first response was, I'm a diver as well. And as like weird, and now I feel guilty about that because, I didn't make it up. I've dove all over the world, from Australia to the Caribbean to, the Pacific Northwest, all over Mexico, Central America, that kind of stuff. I am a diver. But what was funny was I immediately went to, oh, by the way, I'm familiar with that because I'm a diver as well. And as you fast forward through the conversation, her husband got on the phone and she said, he's a diver too. Like it was impactful enough for her to take the time and to say, he understands what we're looking for today.
We always want to create commonality. There's a friend of ours, Don. We've actually even mentioned him on a past episode. Don is a master of this, and he'll just make a joke out of it. I've got a dog. You have a dog? You have a dog? You don't have a dog. Oh, I love Disney stuff. I'm a huge Disney fan. You a Disney fan? No, look, I breathe air. How about you? Do you breathe air? Right? Always he will work to find that commonality that's out there. And that's what Ford is going to help you to do. If you just follow the family, occupation, recreation, dream guideline, you're going to stumble on something that allows you to connect with these people.
I've had a lot of people that are looking to be in the job or grow their business through recruiting or sales. And they're like, I'm really bad at small talk. What do I talk about? Well, Ford is the answer, right?
Absolutely.
You ask them about their family. You ask them about their occupation. You ask them about what do they do for fun, their recreation. You ask them about their dreams, right? What are you looking forward to? What do you want to accomplish in your life? Where do you see yourself in 5 years, right? Yep. Well, what does the perfect neighborhood look like? What's your perfect car look like? What would you do with that car? Like, where would you drive it to?
My wife, she's got a new job. She's been about a year, right? So she's met these friends, and any family that has kids, we're like trying to find a circle of friends that have kids our age. And so probably 4 different times in the last couple months, we've had these small little dinner parties, right? And she'll bring over the friend who she works with and the friend's husband. And now I've got to sit down with this guy. I don't know it all, right? And this is like the framework of what our conversations sound like, right? It's just, oh, the kids, how old are they or whatever? And then it's, so what do you do? Right. And just digging into that, though. It's not just what do you do and then on to the next thing, recreation. But I mean, this is the conversation I had with Jody, the husband of my wife's friend, on Sunday.
Did you like him?
He liked me. No, he never asked me, Ford. No, I'm just kidding. Yeah,
that
he's
is
a great
interesting,
guy.
right?
Yeah.
Well, you spend a whole conversation and you're with somebody and they never ask you a question. Like the whole time that they wanted to spend with you, they wanted to talk about themselves. That's a really weird situation to be in. You don't necessarily build rapport with those people.
Yet they usually come away from it liking you.
Yeah.
Like you,
Because
but you
they
may
get
not
to
like
talk.
them.
Correct.
Yeah. Well, the second factor in our digging was we like people who pay us compliments.
Is that why we don't get along?
Not like nice abs, Chad. Like not shallow ones, but really great ones.
Well, you know what's funny, Ben, is you just said not like nice abs Chad. Like maybe you're saying he doesn't have them. But the reality of it is studies have shown that it doesn't even have to be true.
Right.
The compliment doesn't even have to be true. It carries the same weight when it's not true. And the person receiving it knows it's not true. That's
interesting. That's interesting. Right? You know, we had this class once, ironically called Persuaded.
Good title.
And we played this video about this guy who spent the entire day giving people compliments. And this guy would walk up to somebody and just find something really nice to them, say, you know, it wasn't a pickup line, it wasn't anything else, just said, I really love your shirt. And then he'd keep walking. Or you have amazing hair. Or I love your shoes. Or whatever the thing might be, right? And you could just, they videoed the people walking away. And they literally went from like resting bitch face or resting grumpy face to full-fledged like gigantic smile, eyes lit up. And I noticed that. I thought, gosh, I don't lift people up enough by making little tiny comments. Well, in the class we had this whole disastrous discussion about, well, all he was saying was commenting on his looks. Well, he didn't know him. Like he didn't. Hey, great personality. I love the way you treat people. These were complete strangers, so it kind of blew up. But what could you do to give people very sincere, powerful compliments? Taking the time to say things like, I really appreciated how you spoke to that waitress, or I really appreciate seeing you hold the door for that lady, or whatever that thing might be that you put this thing back in the right spot, like just little tiny compliments. I read this quote the other day. See if I can dig it up in my buckets of stuff. Well, I shared it with Bob Stewart the other day too. It says, when people feel successful, even on tiny things, it changes the way they feel about themselves. Let me read that again. When people feel successful, even on tiny things, it changes the way they feel about themselves. I'm sure this is very much applicable to when people feel good about something in their world, whether it's their hair, their eyes, their shoes, or their whatever, their voice, whatever, probably changes the way they feel about themselves that day. So maybe in this process of becoming better at persuasion and influence and recruiting and just leading in general, the first 2 lessons that we've heard is you need to take the time to sincerely get to know people, search out commonalities by using the Ford method. And then number 2, find things to sincerely compliment people on. By the way, be cautious that it's not looks or it's not always those sort of things that could be taken inappropriate, like you're hitting on somebody or something, right?
Sure.
Because it's a sensitive world, but
It's interesting that you say that, Ben, because the way we would talk about it and the way we would teach people, yes, it's authentic. That's what you were saying, right? Make sure that you're finding out something sincere about the other people that you connect about. Make sure you give sincere compliments. Yet Bob's car salesman example that he just shared with us, we don't even know if it was sincere. And sadly, the statistics and the studies show it really doesn't have to be. Now, if you're wanting a long-term relationship with somebody, it's going to become pretty obvious if you're not being sincere over the long period of time. But if you're on a one-off, like Bob came in to look at a car, maybe it doesn't have to. We don't know if his wife's actually from Arizona. We don't know if the guy actually liked the hat that Bob was wearing that day that he mentioned, yet it still worked.
I think one of the things you do really well, Ben, is, and you've talked about this, you used to be in a role where you would go into people's homes. You would do sales like a door-to-door or later where you're actually in their home. And I remember you talking about how when you would tour a home, you would look for things inside of that home, trophies or posters or whatever it was.
Homemade things.
Yeah, homemade, anything where you could just leave a compliment around that thing, find some similarity around that thing. Even, and we can get into some of these other ones, but so you were actively seeking those out in an environment where you didn't have anything to go on other than just your senses to try to find something to connect with them about.
Let's, maybe slow down for a second. I'll tell you why. Growing up, I had a bad stuttering problem. Growing up, I was in the middle of nowhere, the woods. I wasn't around a whole lot of people. I don't have a strong desire to be social. I don't have a big network of friends. Like, as much as I love you guys and the three people in the room today, we don't really hang out, right? In general, I have a very, very small social circle, and I don't need people around. Also, what that causes is it causes for me it makes me not aware of sometimes the social needs of other people. So what I've had to do is I've had to train myself to take time to, and most people would probably say he's a people person, but when you get to know me, you realize that I'm not. What I do is I care about the relationship and I care about the outcome of how I'm spending my time. So in order to do that, Bob, I've had to learn behavioral styles, both mine and other people, the ability to build rapport quickly. And I would walk around a home, still today. I'll look at what you're wearing. I'll look at the logo, the Seahawks thing on your backpack, the Mickey Mouse on your hat. I'll look and I'll find things that are going to give me questions to ask. In the house, I was looking at family photos. That tells me something about them. I was looking at the type of books. That tells me something. I looked to see if I can figure out their career based on the books that they're reading. I'm looking for all these different sort of things to decide, should I speed this up? Should I slow it down? Should I go in detail? Should I be visual? Should I be kinesthetic? What am I trying to do? This is all in my goal to get them to relate with me.
To get them to like you.
To want to do business, right? Whatever that might be.
Yep.
Now, the third factor is we like people who cooperate with us on mutual goals. In sales, it's often where you run across somebody where you just have a feeling that this person wants to sell you something, not wants to help you accomplish your goals, right?
Oh, yeah.
They don't care what you buy. You got to buy something. It's a wham, bam, thank you, ma'am sort of experience, right? Move on to the next. And then you run into some people that says, I'd really love to be a part of helping you and your family find that next car. It doesn't have to be today. It could be in a year or 5 years. I would like to be that person. How could I help you on that journey? What's most important to you? And I start sitting back and saying, well, this person doesn't just want to sell me a car. This person wants to help me with my goal. So let me share a little bit about my goals. We don't share with people who we don't think are going to cooperate and help us on these goals.
You recently we do this masterclass group, Ben, and you recently had us watch a recruiting appointment that you had done with a gal. And one of the, generally when companies are recruiting, they are, they got all these applicants, right? And they're trying to sell the applicant on the vision of their company. Here's all the cool things we do. In your recruiting appointment, it was very clear that you were looking to show her how through cooperation together, you and her as partners would move on and do something she'd never been able to do on her own. And there was a lot. There was one point in there where she was talking about how long she'd been in the business, and it was like a year more than you, I think. And you said, "Oh, I got in the business right around the same time you did," right? It was like that similarity concept. There was just the cooperation that you showed there, though, where you basically said, hey, how are we together going to get to your goals? Not here's all the awesome stuff that we do that can help you get to your goals. It was how are we going to do that together? It was
Did I use the second factor? Compliments?
Oh, yeah.
Yeah. It's incredible what you've already accomplished.
Yeah, you were saying oh wow, like you're gonna be that, yeah, you were all over it. But they were very subtle, and a lot of times they were wrapped around things where she was giving you something that she felt like was a weakness, and you were saying, oh no, that's not a weakness. That's amazing that you got to this point already doing that. Like, so you were taking the things that she was already kind of down on herself about and turning those into compliments. It was very targeted and precise.
One of the words I heard Bob using there, referring to that opportunity, Ben, is the word we. And I think that's one of the things that also really jumps out when we were talking about liking. Everybody wants to be a winner. I mean, everybody wants to win. Think about it, Bob. When the Seahawks are good, you refer to them as we. Right?
We won.
Yeah, totally. We won this weekend. We won the championships. Yet when the Seahawks get blown out, most other weeks, it's they lost.
Yeah.
It's no longer a we thing, right? It's them. They did it over there, and it becomes a we thing. That's cooperation on getting to the goal of being champions and having our city be the best city, even though you had absolutely nothing to do with the game. It didn't matter whether you watched or didn't watch.
Yeah.
So good. That's funny, Chad. I've never thought of it that way.
Yeah.
Lastly, people like people who are like them or how they would like to be or where they see themselves in the future. Does that make sense? There's a lot of people that aspire to have accomplished what our listeners have accomplished in their lives or their careers. So when they sit down and they meet with you, it's really important that you don't spend time impressing them. You spend time empowering them that they can have exactly what you have and do exactly what you've done through the cooperation of you two working together.
How many people do you like that you don't even know yet? I mean, because you want to be like them. So you look at an athlete or you look at somebody in your business who's highly successful and you don't know them at all, yet you like them because you want to be like them.
I think you get a lot of people like that in your world, Ben. People that think they like you they don't even know you, right? But they see what you're doing. They want to accomplish what you've accomplished. They like the way that you're constantly learning, whatever. They want to be that thing that they see you being, and they like you for it.
Yep.
I strive very hard to make sure everybody believes that they can accomplish what I've accomplished. Now, whether they can or they can't, in my mind, that's actually up to them, not up to me. But the power that we have, the gift that we give people is we simplify things down so that they actually can try. And that should be our goal. People should feel like it's actually possible.
Before we go on with this and we talk about maybe some tips on how people can get people to like them and things like that, there's actually in the book a fourth way that they refer to get people to like you. Now, we didn't talk about it much and we won't talk about it much because you really don't have any control over it. Yet Bob mentioned earlier in the conversation that he knows this is one he's benefited from for years. So Bob, that fourth way is?
Wow, okay, now you're making me look like a real pompous asshole. I think we should spend a little bit of time on this one because, like you said, you can't do anything about this.
No,
physical attractiveness is what we're talking about. And there's a lot of studies that have shown that people are more likely to do business. It's actually a whole range of things with people that are physically attractive. And obviously that's a subjective, right? Chad, Ben might think you're really handsome and I may not. But there are some things beyond just like what your face looks like, right? Because sometimes I go out and I've got a hat on and I should have gotten my hair cut and shown up looking, a little bit more presentable, right? Or I should have shaved today probably, or I should have worn a nicer suit, right? So that what people see of you, that appearance, can be really powerful. In fact, they did a survey up in Canada, and this makes sense because their prime minister is like one of the most handsome men around, right? Trudeau, this guy. But 73% of Canadians denied in the strongest possible terms that appearance had an outcome on their vote, even though a large percentage of them it did. So in this study, they were able to prove that physical attractiveness mattered in their vote. But the majority of people said, no, it didn't, even though the studies they'd taken had showed that it did. So it's this thing that we don't even recognize as happening, which is really powerful.
It's why the celebrity endorsements are so powerful. You get that person who is considered attractive, whether it's Brad Pitt, Julia Roberts, George Clooney, those kinds of people that get that they're attractive, what society considers That's why they get the endorsements. That's why when we were younger, we were looking at car magazines for the girls on the car because it was that attractiveness that attracted us to those cars.
Do you ever, like, I always wonder, I go out and like all these products you interact with online, like the support person who pops up in the bottom right-hand corner is always
Not
this
them.
really attractive person, right? And you're like, man, this company, but it's everywhere you go because they want you to like that company and you could connect it to somebody that's physically attractive. Like it's subconscious. We're not even realizing what's happening here, but it makes you like them just a little bit more.
Yeah, and we can't control it, so it's why we're not talking about it in depth. You can't change I guess you can, but you're not most likely going to go change what your face structure looks like. But I mean, Ben, we hear it all the time, and we joke about it with you. I mean, people talk about your eyelashes and your eyes, and when you take those pictures and you're putting something out on Facebook, and you've got that picture that you use of yourself or that, laying there with people are more likely to like and engage with that post because they see something they like in that picture.
I saw a sign on the internet the other day that said, "For ugly people with great eyes, this is your time."
Yeah.
Because I really feel like this is my time, everybody. I have the
are
mask
excelling.
covering the
His
rest.
mask up. Yeah.
Right, and you just see my long eyelashes. Yeah. We have this chat bot, and the chat bot has artificial intelligence tied to it and responds back to people, and it has a picture of an employee and an attractive individual. This person gets asked out. This person gets gifts sent to them, and it's not even a real name on the person. It's a make-believe person. But because the AI responds back to all the messages, people feel like they have a relationship with that chatbot, and they actually try to engage in that relationship building. Pretty funny. So the power of liking, it can be used in marketing, sales, recruiting, all these things. Let's talk about starting a great conversation. I want to give you a handful of things that you can do that will allow you to build rapport. Number one, you're going to find common interests.
Talked about that.
Common interests, like Ford, right? Number two, share a story or an experience. Now, you have to be careful with this, and I'll tell you something I do. It's a little bit manipulative, but I'm going to share anyway. I will often tell a story of somebody else when I was actually the main character.
So you're asking for a friend.
No, I'm telling about a friend
Right.
instead of myself. And here's why. It's because when I tell the story about myself, they might say, well, it's just you. I'm not going to do it because you're different than me. Or it sounds like you're bragging. So instead of doing that, I might say, can I give you an example of somebody that actually did use this product or service and what happened in their first?
And you might even tie it to, like, let me tell you a story of an agent who was a year into the business just like you are.
Exactly.
So you get to add the similarities.
I love telling stories. I think there is a massive power in turning things into stories instead of just giving people demands or statements.
Well, you're great at it, so use that skill.
Number three, offer a gift, sample, item of value. Often when I start a conversation, we talked about this in the reciprocity part that we already released. I'll often start a conversation off with, I brought you this book because I read a lot of books. I have a lot of books around me all the time. It's my number one gift. It's something meaningful. It's not a cheesy Starbucks card. I thought that you would appreciate this book, Bob. It just starts off with them wanting to like me. I've done something for them that maybe nobody else has done for a long time.
It's the reciprocity of liking.
Yeah.
So it's going back to that other chapter.
Number four, offer a compliment or a referral. Just out of curiosity, Bob, are you currently accepting new customers? Because I have a friend who was just thinking about getting their haircut or eyelashes waxed or whatever your service is going to be today. Would you accept that person? And by doing that, Bob said, oh, this person is willing to refer me business. You automatically like me, right?
Yeah.
Yeah. Number five, go above and beyond in your service. You remember that person. When you find that person, the next time you go back to that business, you always ask for it, right? Where's that person I worked with last time? Is Bob here today? Yeah. Is this server available? Because you know they gave you 2 mints last time. And if you listen to our previous episodes, you know what we mean by that. Number six, ask amazing questions and then listen. Ask amazing questions and then listen. It's very important when getting somebody to like you that you listen a lot more than you talk.
So, Ben, that's episode 25 for people that want to go back.
I'm fascinated by this next one. Are you going to do this next one? Because I'm really interested in what the what an example would be of this.
I do it all the time to you.
Insult?
Like every time I see you.
Is that what he means? The last one we talk about is shock them, insult them, or intrigue them as a way of getting them, of starting the conversation with the goal of getting them to like you. And I wonder how the insult them comes out. That's something you could do with your friends, right? Once you have a relationship with somebody. I'm just curious.
I actually do that quite often in my conversation. So let's talk about that. But before we do, I thought I'd just drop a little quote from my homie, Winston Churchill. Winston said, "Courage is what it takes to stand up and speak, but courage is also what it takes to sit down and listen." And I just thought that was an impactful quote that we should share. The last one, as Bob already released, shock them, insult them, or intrigue them. Here be an example. When somebody is telling me a story and I'm getting to know them, and I could tell that there's something not quite perfect in that conversation, I'll ask a simple question like, "Bob, is that true?" Or if you said, I've had a rough year last year, I haven't done great in sales, I might say, "How did that affect your family?" "Well, what do you mean? It sounds like you didn't make any money. How did that affect your family?"
That's a shocking question to hear from somebody the first time I've met them because it goes really deep.
Yeah. And then I'll follow it up with, "Well, how do you feel about that?" And it brings them down to a level where they're open to hearing some sort of feedback. And intriguing would be, would you be willing to come up with a plan together so that that never happens to you and your family again? And they're intrigued by this idea of having a plan. But sometimes people won't listen until you take the time to say, "I know you walk on water, but you haven't always," right? And you got to knock them down a notch or two. And I'll do that very often in a conversation. Or if somebody appears nervous or rambling, or I don't feel like I'm getting the best of them, I will come in there with a statement or a question to get them back where I'm in control of the conversation. You add all these things up, these are tools that you can use to start a great conversation in order to build rapport. When you're thinking about interviewing or selling, you just got to have a few things, available so you can start this process. Like, one, you got to know your questions. Knowing your questions, Chad, is not just always winging it, but having a list of the 20 most important questions that you talk to your customers about, or the 20 most important questions you ask somebody that you're interviewing. Or there's even an article in the New York Times about 36 questions to fall in love with somebody. Like, there is power to these questions. You got to know, what is your ideal outcome? In this conversation, where are you leading them to? Imagine getting in your car and having no destination. You would either go nowhere or drive in circles or end up in Canada, right? You're going to end up in the wrong spot.
Start with the end in mind concept. Know where you want it to go.
Yeah. Have everything ready. Have your materials, your proof, your examples. For me, blank pieces of paper and a Sharpie so that I can take notes. Remember, people like people who pay attention to them.
Yep.
And by me taking notes when Bob's talking, it shows him that I care about the conversation that we're having.
Yep.
Last, I control the environment. One of the best ways to control the environment outside of just where do people sit is to control the conversation. You control the conversation by always being the person asking the questions. I hope all of these things added up into some ideas and thoughts of how you can use the power of liking in your marketing, your conversations, your recruiting, and your sales.
And as we talk about liking, we're not just talking about that like you can get on Facebook. We're talking about that relationship, although we hope you like the podcast enough to be joining us on Facebook, facebook.com/groups/win-make-give, where we go deeper and deeper into these conversations after each episode has aired. So make sure you're joining us there. Make sure you've subscribed, and make sure if you like us enough, you share us with a friend. Remember, wash those hands, and as always, do good.